Welcome back to Brush Up Your Game. And today, Tristan, I think this is one of your favorites. We are ranking Nebula class ships.
Well, I'm not only the president of the Nebula Class Appreciation Society, but I'm also a member. So,
Ah,
yeah, I like I like this ship. I don't run it nearly as much as you'd imagine, but I like the concept of the Nebula. Let's put it that way.
I can understand that. So, my goal today is to not make a complete idiot out of myself. It is to try to have a ranking that looks close to yours. Uh, I asked myself in this list, what would Tristan do?
Well, it's always a dangerous question.
It is. It is very much indeed. The good news is I only had six ships to choose from,
Yep.
and my cat has decided to say hello in the video. And but we can get started here. So number six, I went with the double weapon generic.
I want the
Oh,
double crew generic.
oh, okay, I do understand. I think this is why it's Type 10 phasers, right? That's why the double weapon would take a little precedent.
100%. Yeah.
Okay, okay, that was my thinking. That was my debate, and I'm like, I don't know, because and they're reasonably priced, and I just I fall into the traps of Federation crew upgrades really good, but um, I Type 10 phasers are not my like automatic go to yet. But
Yeah. I mean, I get it. They're the two weapon slot thing is a bit of a drawback, but man, I think if you have those two weapon slots available, um, they're just they're just so good because there's no limitation on the attack quality or anything like that. The number of attack dice that the ship has, like Type 8, you get the reroll ability at the minimum, and if you're facing cloak ships, you just get an automatic straight conversion. I mean, that's just so nasty.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
it, it's 3 points. So
it is.
I actually, I have the generic a little bit higher on my list because of what Type 10 phasers can do for the generic. So
Okay.
anyway, but I mean, I think overall the generic is solid. It's 4143, so it's got some defensive quality. It's got some nice attack. It's got the action bar you need. It's not that expensive. You have a lot of options to upgrade with four slots. I mean, a lot of generics don't get four upgrade slots. They only get three
Right, right.
at this price point. So I think it's pretty generous there. The only drawback, and this is true for all the Nebulas, is they don't have a rear firing arc, which doesn't make sense to me whatsoever. But um,
No, not at all.
but otherwise, it's very serviceable, I think, for a generic ship. So
It is. It's yeah. In two crew slots, you can't really go wrong. But
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
yeah. The Phoenix. Oh, I am making a mess of myself right now. Okay, go ahead. Talk about the Phoenix.
Phoenix, it's in a maneuverability, but you're limited to the same maneuver that you chose before, the same speed. And then you got to take an aux token. There's just better ways if you want to manipulate maneuvers to do that than here. The upside again is two weapon slots,
Mm-hmm.
so you can do Type 10 phasers. Um, five slots overall, which is very generous, but I just don't see myself using this ability a ton. There might be a few situations where you absolutely have to get out of a bad situation, but I think you can mitigate that by just making better decisions going into that activation phase to begin with, than using this ability. So,
Fair, fair.
but I
I
love
get
the
that.
ship. I think Phoenix, cool name. Uh, I like the weird deflector dish radar thing
Yeah,
that's got
this
going
the
on.
science pod.
Yeah, I think that's the only time we saw that variant in the
Mm-hmm.
in the show. Otherwise, it was that more delta shaped one, which is pretty
Yeah,
common. But um, another good reason to have a construction card for that. But anyway,
agreed. All right. So hear me out on the Sutherland at number 4.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
I see you
I'm
agree.
here with
Hear
you.
me out on why the
Yep.
Sutherland's worse than the Phoenix,
Okay.
or at least in my mind. Because if you're running this Sutherland, you're not running the superior Sutherland.
Hmm. Yep.
Also, because if I'm attacking at range 3, I probably had the opportunity to target lock. I may not have because they could have moved after me. They also could have been cloaked. I get that. I understand these things. But for such a limited ability, being range 3 only, I just I don't know that I care. And given a choice, take the names off of it, whatever. I think I'd rather have the ability to change a bad move, react to something my opponent did, rather than every rare once in a while reroll some attack dice. And I understand there's some torpedoes you have to spend your target lock for, and then you'd still have a reroll built in.
Hmm.
But again, let me find other ways to get myself quality. And I think I can do it with the slots that this ship provides. So that's my justification for the Sutherland being the worst of the named abilities in my mind.
Yeah, no, I think it's fair. I mean, honestly, you're not going to run this version because the other version is much better.
Uh-huh.
Um, but I think there is some some viability if you're going to kind of run a torpedo boat. So is there's one photon torpedo weapon that I think is specific to the Nebula class. It's like secondary torpedo launcher
It
or aft
is,
torpedo
yeah.
launcher. Or basically you can fire it from a secondary arc, and I think you can also is that the same one where you can fire it after another torpedo that's been launched or something? So
Yes.
anyway, there's some limited application um, where that may be useful. But again, realistically, you're not going to do that because you're going to use the other Sutherland. I, I do like the weapon slot set here is nice. You have a lot of flexibility there. But at the end of the day, I'm probably not going to run either the Phoenix or the Sutherland if I'm running a Nebula class ship. So,
Sure. Sure. And I
but I
get
still
that.
appreciate them.
We can appreciate things we're not going to play with. It's fine. So, okay, number 3 for me is the Phoenix, and
Mhm.
like I said, it's not much better. I don't really want to run it. As we've said in the past few episodes, if you have to adjust your maneuver dial, you probably haven't guessed well. You're probably not thinking about your opponent's maneuver too much when you're playing the game. I don't want to go as far as to tell somebody to get better or get good, um, but I might say that that's an area to attempt to improve upon. And ship abilities like this become less good the more you play. In fact, just playing the mission The Wounded, which will probably air as a video after this video, the Phoenix is a mandated ship. Its ability was never used because it's not good.
Okay.
And it doesn't matter if you're moving before or after Cardassian ships. You just kind of look at them and you go, yeah, you did what I figured you were going to do. And I don't I don't need to second guess that. So, and more so, I don't want to take the aux power. I can't afford it. And yeah, you just find yourself in not great positions. But
Yeah.
the slots are nice. I mean, they're the same slots you get on the Sutherland, so it's not much of a consideration. There's the very rare uh, time where you did like a 3 straight and you decide you want to do a 3 turn or something like that. Then it could be useful, but very rarely. Okay, so the generic for you at number 2 or
The
number 3.
generic
Sorry.
with the two weapon slots. I mean, 19 points. You throw Type 10 phasers on there, 22 points for a 5-1-4-3. You could even, if you want to go all in, you could put reinforced shielding on there. So now you have a 25-point ship that's a 5-1-4-5. You could put five of them in a swarm. Um,
Oh,
I probably maybe think about that too much, but even if without the enhanced shields, or if you just want to have some with extra shields, some with extra offensive firepower, 22 points either way. You have some flexibility to put on some nice captains, and I mean, you could do a 4 or 5 ship swarm fleet and have a little bit of teeth in there, and then you have some built-in attack quality with the Type 10 phasers. I'm really leaning into the Type 10 phasers with this one, but I really love that. You can have a 5 attack ship with quality for 22 points and still be able to build a good rest of your fleet. I mean, this could just be a number 4 ship that just kind of sits there and your opponent has to just be concerned about it. I like that. So
and concerned they probably should be. All right. For me, number 2, the Tacumba. And getting some discounts on Vulcan captains, admirals, crew. It's nice. Don't get me wrong. It's nice. Vulcan captains, they can be pretty good. Vulcan admirals, not so good. Vulcan crew,
yeah.
yeah, they're decently good. I like them. So some discounts there, always good. When the ship performs scan action, get an additional scan token. Also very good, because Vulcan scan shenanigans are called Vulcan scan shenanigans for a reason, and this ship plays into them, and I very much enjoy them. This is kind of the offensive Nebula, and it should be. It's really good, and it's going to mess with your opponent's ability to live, and I like that. You ever have a day where you just realize you can't do anything right?
You have there's nothing wrong with your list here, David.
Uh,
I mean, you're making very good points along the way, and I have no qualms with any of them. I just I have my own quirks of how I like to play and stuff, and that's where my thoughts come into play here. I mean, the Sutherland is probably over the course of the game, at least from its release, the one of the most effective Federation ships there are. I mean, I think it's shown
yeah,
up consistently in the top of tournaments. I know it's shown up in a lot of, top 2, top 3 fleet builds over at the UK on nationals. If you can turn this into a defensive beast, building around this cancel hit ability, and it's every time that you get attacked. So
yeah,
your opponent just can't try to swarm this ship and overwhelm the ability because it's gonna cancel a bunch of hits. You put on a Rudy Ransom, or you put on a Sulu or Tom Paris, or a Valeris, and you're generating all these ways to evade and cancel the opponent's attack, and now it becomes a real hassle for your opponent to deal with it. I ran the Sutherland in our Federation Romulan War campaign earlier this year and had a lot of success with it. There were a couple missions in there. There was one specifically where you were supposed to try to defend a clone of Kalis. You're supposed to hide a clone of Kalis on one of your ships, and your opponent was supposed to figure out what ship it was and try to destroy it. Well, guess what ship I put it on? Because it was going to be a lot harder to kill, right? So,
a generic
um,
Tholian.
yeah, exactly, yeah. Um, so I mean, it's a very very good ship. There's nothing wrong with that. Again, just for my play style, I like the Tacumba a little bit better, and I'll get into that into a minute.
Sure.
Again, five upgrade slots, very solid. I think for a ship at this you know point value. 3 crew. Federation has a ton of crew options. I wouldn't mind having one of those as a weapon slot for Type 10, but uh, you know, I'm gonna keep coming back to that. But yeah, I mean, this is if you want a defensive tanky ship, this and the Prometheus are where you want to turn to, honestly. So
Yeah. Uh, I have built several a Sutherland, Riker, shield adaptation. Steal some
mhm.
Dominion tech. That's the way to do it. Yeah, it's the Sutherland is a beast to attempt to kill. That's why I started running things like the Amar and uh, all kinds of multi-attacking builds
Mhm.
because anything you can do to try to knock that ship out is uh,
So,
is
yeah,
necessary.
what you'd want to do now is you can run. Is it the Da Vinci? The Da Vinci, you can spend that scan token to a put a time token on the opposing ship during the combat phase. So I think that would
That
basically
does
effectively.
sound right.
What am I
Uh,
thinking of here?
I know it's one of the new ships of the line.
It's either the Da Vinci or it's the 'cause it's the Saber class. I don't think it's the Saber itself because the Saber has that um, kind of fleet. Yeah,
Yeah.
so Da Vinci combat phase. If there's a scan token beside the ship, target a opposing ship within range 1 to 2, and place a time token on the target ship card. So, and that's how you knock this one out, right? Is you basically cancel the ability for that combat phase. But um, anyway, those are the things I think about sometimes. Um, but yeah, I mean, otherwise, how do you overcome that? It's pretty nasty. So
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't always that the Sutherland itself is the nasty part. It's the all the defensive shenanigans that
yeah,
exist to go with it.
yeah.
And boy, the old Fremont group got really good at perfecting those.
And I almost we had a I almost ran this one a while back as we did a flagship event where you could run a flagship card on here.
Oh,
Uh, and I had it with Kirk, and I think somehow I put like 3 cheat deaths on it, and then a bunch of. I was pretty close to running it. I was like, oh no, I'm gonna go somewhere. I'm gonna go in a different direction. I went Klingon, but I thought about it.
oh, that hurts. I mean, mostly because I'd like to have seen it, but
Yeah, I might
still,
still try
that
something here.
hurts.
Anyway,
Uh, all right, the Tacumbra.
Tacumbra. This is the one I've run the most, maybe because I have a soft spot for shenanigans. But there are 2 ways I like to build this one out, and I think are just a ton of fun. So one is to kind of keep it on the cheap side. You put Mirok on here, so he becomes a 7 skill 2 point captain, and he's got the ability if you have a scan token beside it, you can convert a blank to a hit, I think. And then you put Mr. Spock on here, who doesn't get a discount because he's technically Federation, which is unfair. But you put original series Spock, where you have a scan token, and now you're converting your battle stations to hits. So you're taking away 2 of your opponent's dice. You're doing a bunch of conversions, and it becomes a pretty effective ship. And it comes out to what 29 points at that point.
Yeah,
And if
that
you want to
sounds
hide
right.
Spock underneath Genesis effect, now it becomes a 26 point ship, something like that.
Okay,
So
yeah.
yeah, I mean it's just really cheap and it has it really plays well into that scan ability. The other way I like to use it is putting oh, I can't think of her name now from Enterprise because it's getting too late in the night. T'Pol, Captain
T'Pol.
T'Pol from the Vulcan faction pack, where you can either spend your scan tokens like evade or like battle station, and
Oh yeah,
I ran this one. You build up. You have those 2 tech slots. You put close range scan on there. You put high energy sensor sweep. You put cork on there you can build up the shields and all this kind of stuff. Basically, the idea is you end up with like 6 or 7 scan tokens at the end by the time of the combat phase, and now you can just absorb a bunch of damage because you're spending all those scans like evades. And I think it's kind of fun. It's not super effective offensively. You can hide a Spock underneath Genesis effect. I think that's what I did to get some combat ability. But then you also have a bunch of scans there, so if you do attack, you can basically wipe away all of your opponent's defensive die, and you're going to do 3-4 guaranteed damage,
Hmm.
something like that. So I I just think that's a lot of fun, and I'd rather run it that way than run the defensive one. Even though I mentioned before, I also like defense, so there's nothing wrong with running both. They're both inexpensive enough. You could you could set them up, and you could have T'Pol as defense. You could do something else on Sutherland for more defense, and you have fun that way too. So, but it really comes down to personal preference. There's no wrong answer for either of those in my mind.
Well, there you go. All right. So, president of the Nebula Appreciation Society. Uh, what nebula is missing?
Uh, there are two that I can think of that show up in DS9. I think there's the first one. I think is the Bellerophon, which we later saw was a Intrepid class a little bit later in the series. But the Bellerophon was it was used for some. It was what was that episode where they were all hanging on the Bellerophon, and I think they were testing some scientific thing about stellar explosions or something like that. I can't remember. It was
Uh,
weird where Cisco fell in love with this dude's wife.
oh
Can't
yeah,
think of
yeah,
the name of the
yeah.
episode.
I did watch that one. I kind of toned it out, but
Yeah, it's not great, but it takes place pretty much entirely on a Nebula class, which is
uh
kind
huh.
of unique. And then there's another one later. I can't think of the name of it, but in was it is it not Duet? That's earlier, but where Cisco crash lands on the planet with Ducat, and he's slowly going crazy after they recapture DS9 because they're supposed Cisco was escorting him back to some sort of Federation penal colony or whatever, and then they get attacked by the Dominion. But that ship that escorting them was a Nebula. I can't think of the name of it. So either one of those would be cool.
Mm.
Um, but what I'd like to see is a ship construction card for the Nebula class that has to do with those sensor pods, right? And you have one of them would be the radar pod like you see on the Phoenix. The other one would be the more Delta style. And you know, see, I'm not, maybe one of them is more of a defensive, maybe one's more of an, the other one's more of a, I think the one's more of a weapons pod, something like that. So I think there'd be some flexibility there to have a few more Nebula classes and have a construction card that specifically targets the Nebula class to allow some flexibility as to how they operate in the game.
Got it. Yeah. So the one with Ducat was the Honshu.
Honshu, yes,
I mean, there's
yeah,
also other nebula classes that exist. Was the Farragut that showed up in
oh yeah,
Generations.
at the end of Generations, yep.
The I'm gonna get the pronunciation wrong, but the Bonchune,
Oh yes,
Bonchune,
okay,
that was that came to fight Prometheus.
yep,
There
okay.
is actually a Prometheus Nebula class.
It was
Um,
that at Wolf 359?
no, it was in Deep
No.
Space Nine. There was a Professor Gideon Sayatic who tried to reignite a dead star.
Oh, okay. So I got it wrong. I thought that was Bellerophon, but that Prometheus. Okay, yep, that's the episode
So
I was
that was
thinking of.
Prometheus. The
There's also
Bellerophon
the
is a nebula, but
yeah,
that was at Wolf.
that was a Wolf. Okay,
Yay for
and then the other
Memory
one I just
Alpha.
thought of was the Lexington. I think that's the one uh, that Elizabeth Lenz, Bashir's rival at the academy. She got her position there.
Yeah.
I think that was a Nebula class.
The leads was the Nebula in the opening credits of Deep Space Nine for several
Okay.
seasons. The Lexington was actually has a ton of background on um, here, but that's where the Lexington was in uh, First Contact.
Okay.
And was at the Fleet Museum in Picard.
Oh yeah, there was yeah there was a Nebula in the Fleet Museum. I'm trying
And
to think if in season two of Picard if there was like because that whole fleet that runs into the uh, Borgatti or whatever they're called.
yeah,
Um, a lot of them were just kind of updates of earlier classes. I'm trying to think, was there kind of a refitted Nebula in that fleet or not?
I
I
think
want to
there
say
is,
no.
but
It's
um,
probably not called Nebula, but
no,
it
it's
would
there's a new
look like it.
class for it.
Yeah.
Um, and there's
I mean, one of the
also a
reasons I like,
Merrimack, but there's
yep, the Merrimack, there was a Merrimack and a Monitor, yeah.
yep.
So to play off the ironclads, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Um, but Merrimack was more like Merrimack was in Chain of Command, the next gen.
Okay.
So it was another one like the Sutherland.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there are any other Nebula classes. I don't know, probably I don't know if you saw them on screen or not, but that would have
No,
been at the
not
would have been
named.
part of Redemption Part Two. But yeah, there weren't a ton that were ever called out on screen. But I mean, I like the Nebula because it's one of these kit bashed ships
Uh huh.
that just makes sense. I feel like um, it it just opens up the universe a little bit in Next Generation, and I think it's kind of what is you get starved of in the original series, where everything is a Constitution class, right? And that makes the world a little bit smaller. So at least here you have this brand new ship that has some design cues and it makes sense within that universe, and uh, and it opens it up a little bit. I would love to see some of the other Wolf 359 ships show up as cards, and I know we won't because the models just aren't there. But to have like the Cheyenne or the Chekhov or some of these other weird designs, the New Orleans class that
Yeah,
you
the
can just barely see in the
Norway, the
background.
steam runner.
Yeah, those would be great too. Those first contact ones. But I just love this kind of bulbousy the fat one the fat one era of Next Generation
Oh
where
yeah, okay.
yeah
Those.
where, everything was just all these ships that end up in the Wolf 359 graveyard are just kit bash versions of the Galaxy class, but they're built in these weird configurations. The USS Drake, which we never actually even saw in Arsenal of Freedom, but that one showed up in Decipher later, and it was the Ubuntu class or something like that. But again, it was
Yeah.
another kind of kit bash thing. So I
Really
would love to see
similar to
some
a
sort of.
nebula.
It was similar to Nebula. It was kind of like a cross between the Nebula and the New Orleans class.
Yeah.
It was
Like an
it was a very
older
weird design.
nebula.
Yeah.
But yeah, just I don't know. The Decipher did a lot right with ships.
Decipher had a lot of fun with it. And I don't know if they just had more leeway or that's just their design philosophy. Uh, but yeah, they generated their own kind of images and designs for some of these ships that you didn't really get a good look at before. They came up with names that weren't maybe technically canon, but made a lot of sense. The one I think about is Chang's Bird of Prey. in the Decipher game was the Icaeus Claudius, for Claudius from Shakespeare. So it kind of plays into that philosophy that Chang had and stuff.
Right.
It's a little bit of the flavor that I feel I would like to see have had happen with Attack Wing, rather than just calling it Chang's Bird of Prey, or call or what have you. But
The
it is what it is at this point.
Ferengi. Well, okay, the Ferengi ones actually make sense because they are that vain.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense, and I get I feel like that they're a little more constrained as like, okay, we can't name stuff unless it's has you know some canonical references or whatever. They're just not going to make things up, and they probably can't use some of those Decipher names because that might have been part of some sort of licensing thing that Decipher did, where they created those names. That's part of that specific subset of their game. Um,
Yeah.
but it would be nice to have some naming conventions for these ships. But
It would. But I don't know. It's kind of it's it's tough to figure it all out. It's kind of like, well, it's going to be what it is. They legal gets in the way of a lot of good fun.
yeah, I think that's what delayed having a Da Vinci. The Da Vinci was supposed to come out, I believe, a lot earlier in the game's lifespan.
Yes.
It was supposed to be rather than what did we end up getting? So we had the Jaeger, and then we had
The Montgolfier.
yeah, the Montgolfier was supposed to be the Da Vinci, right? And then there were some
As far as I'm
licensing
aware, yeah.
issues. Yeah, some licensing issues with that, and finally came out later. So, I mean, I think there's hope that we'll maybe see more fun kind of Easter eggs, if you will, for ships that show up. Um, Still hoping maybe we'll get that USS Jupiter Akira class, and maybe we'll get some more of these nebulas down the road, and you never know. There's still something to be had out of this game, and um, just hoping WizKids can get to it sooner rather than later.
Yeah. I certainly there with you. I always hope for the best. If I didn't, I wouldn't be doing this. So,
Yeah,
but yeah, Nebula's good ships. I have learned much today, as I hope you viewers, listeners have as well. So, thank you all for joining us, Tristan. Thank you as always, and
yeah, you're welcome.
until next time, keep brushing up your game, folks. Take care.